Well, I think the most important part is that it's not about you. So most
It's not.
people, no, but sorry to offend you if, well, in this relationship, it is about you. But when you're trying to meet somebody, build rapport, get to know them, a lot of people tend to talk about themselves because that is, let's be honest, quite often our favorite topic is ourselves. But it's when you really start to get curious about the other person, to find out a little bit more about them, ask them better questions. That's when a real rapport happens and they start to have a great conversation. This is Chocolate and Coffee Break, a compassionate proposition, a space to share stories, bridge divides, and spark meaningful connections. So grab your chocolates, pour your cuppa, and let's break down barriers, one conversation at a time. And now, here's your host, Andrea Pudding.
Welcome to Chocolate and Coffee Break. I hope you've got your chocolate and your coffee and you're ready to start and listen to this show, because today I have a special guest who will help us to understand how we can make the most out of our chocolate and coffee break. So I'd like to introduce you to Warren Tate. He's a professional speaker, international bestseller, author, and expert in communication. He has worked with C-suite executives, new startup companies, and sales teams to develop and deliver empowering presentation and pitches for greater influence. As a real estate coach, mentor, a pitch coach for a number of startup accelerator programs, and the past CEO of Real Estate Franchise Group, Warren has assisted many business owners to launch, present, and grow their business. He's worked with companies around the world, including Harcourts, IBM, Ernst & Young, NAR, United States, Century 21, and multiple prop tech startup businesses in the US and UK. Warren is qualified presentation and speaker coach, as well as a powerful keynote presenter using engaging stories and humor, all while incorporating tangible outcomes for any audience. Proud father of 2 adult children and a fur baby called Freddie Mercury. So I'd like to welcome Warren.
Thank you, Andrea. What a fantastic intro. That guy sounds amazing.
Of course. But he is also the voiceover for this show, so I thought he was an appropriate guest to have early on in our show. And the reason I really wanted to have Warren is while he is a communication expert, he doesn't just do what a lot of so-called communication experts do and teach you how to present your message. He also is very much involved with the idea of how you build rapport with people and create an experience for them while you're talking to them So for Chocolate and Coffee Break, it's really important that we know how to sit and listen and have a conversation with people, because while it sounds easy, I always make it sound easy. All you got to do is get some chocolate and coffee and have a conversation. But there's a whole lot of other stuff that just doesn't happen unless you're prepared. And as an introvert, I know that sometimes if I'm talking to another introvert, it can be real hard work. So I'm hoping that Warren can give us some tips on how to make the most out of your chocolate and coffee break. So Warren, where do we start? Where do we start when we're meeting somebody to have our chocolate and coffee break? But because this is all about someone who's different to us or someone that we don't know. So how do we get into this conversation?
Well, I think the most important part is that it's not about you. So
It's not.
No, but sorry to offend you if, well, in this relationship, it is about you. But when you're trying to meet somebody, build rapport, get to know them, a lot of people tend to talk about themselves because that is, let's be honest, quite often our favorite topic is ourselves. But it's when you really start to get curious about the other person, to find out a little bit more about them, ask them better questions, that's when a real rapport happens, and they start to have a great conversation. And as in my book, it's like a tennis, a match of a game of tennis, but you don't want to win it. You don't want to start with an ace and serve up, and then, that's it. That's the end of the conversation. You want to have a nice rally back and forward, getting to know each other a little bit more. So it's not about you. It is always being curious about who it is that we're speaking with.
So I have a box of conversation starters, but I didn't pull one out this morning. So I'd like you, if you can share with us what you think is a great conversation starter for meeting somebody for the first time.
Well, it's not saying, so what do you do? And a lot of people do start that, and especially being based here in Melbourne, Australia, we are known for having 4 seasons in one day, and the weather becomes a really very simple topic to talk about. But as soon as somebody talks about, oh, how's this weather, or what do you do, I just almost cringe and sort of go internal and say, oh, please, come on, you've got to do better than that. But most of us like to talk about things that we enjoy doing. You might have a passion for something. So it could be as simple as, what's exciting you at the moment? What projects have you got on the go? And that's far better than saying, what do you do for work? Or the other thing which I like to often talk about with people is we often plan our holidays more than we plan our lives. So where are you off to? Have you got any exciting trips coming up, or where have you been recently? And that creates an open-ended question which gets people speaking about something that they want to speak about, something that they enjoy. And you quite often see their eyes light up because they think, oh, hang on, this is different. But also it gets them excited because they're going to talk about something that they enjoy doing, or they've got an exciting project on the go, or it just came back from Bali or from Italy or wherever it may be. And then it just opens up a plethora of opportunities to go down various avenues when they start to talk about something that they enjoy.
Yeah, it makes, when someone asks you a question about yourself, you're just going to let it go, and you can just feel like you can, this person's interesting because they asked me a question about me.
Well, the funny thing is, it's quite interesting. Dating is almost like starting new friendships and so on. So you'd hear people talk about when they go out on a date, and all they did was talk about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's you as an individual, well, that's not working. If you're just talking about yourself and nobody's asked you anything, but you've just gone and given them everything that you want to tell them. Whereas if you're asking all the right questions and getting them to answer questions, and people will walk away from that conversation, they'll go, I found that person really interesting. It was fascinating. And then they may have a conversation with somebody else. Say, so what did you find? What about them? What did they do? Oh, well, actually, I just spoke about myself because they just kept asking me questions, and we were talking for almost half an hour. It was great. So if people walk away from the conversation thinking, I really enjoyed that conversation, quite often it is them talking about themselves only because you've asked really interesting questions and you've been curious to find out more about them.
But one of the things that I find is really important in a lot of the stuff that I do is that being present with people. And I have seen you be so present with people, with me in a crowded room, but somebody comes and talks to you and you are completely present with them. So how do people tap into being completely present with somebody?
Well, I almost take a three-pronged approach to this. First and foremost, you have to be ready to receive the information. So you have to be really focused. And a great way to do that is actually look at their facial expressions. And it starts with the eyes. And if you start staring at people, it gets a bit creepy. So don't do that. But just look into their eyes and then watch how their facial expressions are, because our emotions come through our facial expressions. So if they're feeling a little bit nervous, you'll see that facial expression. If they're gone through something that's a joyous occasion, you'll see it in their facial expressions. More importantly, their eyes when they smile and they get the creases at the side of their eyes. You're like, yeah, you're really enjoying this. That's great. But also, don't take in distractions. Quite often, in a networking or in a party scenario, or after an event, you'll see these people now, they'll be having this conversation, but then they'll go, and then they'll come back to you and it's like, hang on, me, hello, don't worry about who's behind me, just focus on me. So it's really about making sure that you are listening, but listening to hear what they have to say rather than listening to respond. Really listening intently, but also there's the subtle things that you can do when you're having a conversation. You just, it might be the thinker's pose where you put your hand on your chin. You think, okay, that's thought provoking. It's interesting. I like that point of view. Or just say, and just acknowledging with the little gentle nods or the, oh, wow, can't believe that. And the little acknowledgements, those little noises, right, okay. And that just shows that the person that's speaking, that you really are paying attention. And then the last little secret is,
can we go to a break? Well, what? Just hold that thought, Warren, because I want a piece of chocolate and I'm going to go to a break. So you've got your chocolate and we're just going to have a nibble while we have a quick break. So listen to who we have on our ads because they're helping us to get this show happening. We'll be back in a minute.
Yummy trouble.
You tick the boxes, career, commitments, calendar that's more packed than your pantry, but something's still missing. In Compassionate Purpose, Andrea Pudding invites you to stop chasing busy and start living with intention. This book is about real fulfillment through small acts of compassion, purpose-driven service, and meaning that lasts. No pressure, no perfection, just purpose with heart. Compassionate Purpose, Discovering a Life of Fulfillment. Search for Andrea Pudding on Amazon.
How far would you go to keep your loved ones safe when everything else falls apart? In 1945, Ellie and her family risked everything to escape the horrors of war. They fought through frozen landscapes, bombed cities, and an unforgiving world that seemed bent on destroying them. Would you risk your life to keep your family together, even when survival seemed impossible? In the midst of despair, they found the courage to continue. This is their story.
And Silently Falls the Snow, available now on Amazon. And we're back with Warren Tate. So, Warren, let's continue on our journey on being present with people. How do we make the most of these moments that we are having in our chocolate and coffee break?
Well, I just got to finish that last point because it's probably one of the most important. It shows that you really have been listening. When they finish what they've been telling you, you've asked them questions and you've been curious to know more. And then you just repeat back some of the things that they said, some of the highlights. And maybe you may pass a comment on it, but when you repeat back, and here is the secret, you repeat back the words that they actually say, they really respect you. They say, wow, you really have been listening to everything that I've said, and you actually are interested in what I've got to say, and you're curious, and you want to stay here and keep conversing with me. That doesn't normally happen, and in this day and age, people actually get surprised by that. And that really disappoints me because people are just, in these short conversations. What can you do for me? Do you benefit me? Can I get something from you? And then off they go. Whereas when you show that curiosity, that interest and repeat back and you're listening to understand and not listening to respond, people really go, okay, yep, this person, they're a really classy person. They are a professional. They I want to get to know them more, and I'd like to build a friendship or even a business relationship with them. So yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah. It's so important that we listen to understand, because it's very easy for us to go into that first level of conversation where it's all about me. When am I going to get my turn to respond to talk? And we've all had experiences like that with people. And sometimes I feel like that myself. It's like everyone else is talking. When's my turn? Mm-hmm. And then we can go into one where we can listen for facts, but that's not what it's about. We need to listen with emotion and listen and pick up other people's emotion. That's with empathetic listening. So that's a really important.
I am listening and empathetically listening to you, but one of the key elements, again, especially for the introverted people, they say, "Oh, have you got anything exciting planned?" So you ask a question and says, "Oh, yes, yep, going off to Italy in July, August." And that's the end of the response. Whereas how you respond to a question is also really important. So you need to give the listener who's asked the question and the person who's curious, give them options. So, yes, I love going to Italy, go there every year. I like to spend summer there, go to a town called Ascoli Piceno. It's a town which I go to every year. And then like to explore other parts of Italy because we like going to the beach, we like the river, and we love the food. So by just adding a little bit more detail to your response rather than saying, "Oh, yes, I go to Europe and holiday in the European summer," there's no real avenues you can go there. But when you give the option to the listener who's asked the question, I've given the option of towns. What's this town about? I've given the option of, which beach and what's the river like? I've also given an option around food and, about loving the food and the local. So when you are in these conversations, how you respond is also going to open up various levels of conversation.
Yeah, it's so important that we do have that a little bit more, be willing to give ourselves a little bit more, give of ourselves. The other thing that I find really important is perspective, is being willing to see somebody else's perspective and not be jumping into our own. We talk about walking in other people's shoes, but hang on, we need to take our shoes off before we walk in their shoes so that we let go of that judgment. Do you have any hints that we can use to see somebody else's perspective?
I think look in this day and age, and there's so many. This drives me mad. I love a good debate. I love having great conversations, but also hearing an alternative opinion. But too often now, we are set up today. You are right, or I am right, and you are wrong. Full stop. End of story. And I don't care what you say. I am right, and you are wrong. And I don't even want to hear why you think you are right. I don't want to hear it. No matter what you say, you're not going to convince me. And we're finding that a lot, especially with the political landscape that we find ourselves in at the moment, across America, and also we're in a federal election here in Australia. And people are very strong in their opinions and don't want to hear any other voices. So it's important that you say, look, I find that interesting, and I can certainly understand where you're coming from there. And I've actually thought like that numerous times. However, I've seen things a little bit differently based on your life experience, based on my education background, based on what my parents went through. And by leading in, by respecting their opinion, by also saying that, yes, there's elements of that which you agree with. By the way, even if you don't, do it, because otherwise they don't want to talk to you. And then you can then share a little bit more about your view of the world, your perspective. But until you agree with them to an extent, you're not going to get anywhere, and they're not going to listen to you, and they're just going to shut you down. And I wish it wasn't the case today, but it truly is. And this is where the adaptation of communication I found interesting over the last probably 5 years, on the back of COVID and all the variations that have occurred. People are a lot more terse, a lot more, they have stronger language, stronger opinions. And I'll always come back to you are right. And, the person who's speaking saying they are right and you are wrong. So, yeah, it's a fascinating question. I love the question. The answer is complicated. And it also comes back to being able to mimic some of their language and mimic some of their body language as well.
Yeah. Do you think social media has had a lot to do with that? That's stopped people from seeing other people's opinions, because you see someone you don't like, you just block them.
Well, the good old fake book, as I call it. But I'm going to show you the life that I live. Well, it's actually not my real life, but this is the life that I'm going to show the world, and so on. But yeah, the opinions and the keyboard warriors, the bullying, the vitriol that comes through, and it really is a nasty place. And you can see how people can get, how you can go down that rabbit hole if you're that sort of person and you're inclined to do that. But yes, it's a good place to stay away from if you're not feeling too flash about yourself, because it can really put you into some dark places. And again, I mentioned COVID previously, and obviously there were some very strong opinions about that. There were strong opinions around what people were saying online, and because we were locked up, people were really getting their anger out on the keyboard. So yeah, it's a challenging landscape. And I'll go back to what I said before. We have to change the way we communicate to get ourselves around it, because otherwise we will shut down ourselves, and that doesn't solve any problems.
So we're going to just take another quick break while I refill my cup. And while we're having a break, don't forget to have some chocolate, listen to what people are sharing with you, and subscribe to the channel, to Facebook and YouTube. And remember, I love some comments.
Hello, I'm Annie Burke, Cosmic Heart Intuitive. I'm the animal-human relationship enricher. I help animal parents connect with their animals, living or in spirit, through telepathic conversations. And you too can learn how to connect with your animal telepathically with my mentorship program. It's just amazing what you can learn from your animals about their past lives, their current life, and their future lives. It will change your life. It will change their life.
You've ticked the boxes: career, commitments, calendar that's more packed than your pantry, but something's still missing. In Compassionate Purpose, Andrea Putting invites you to stop chasing busy and start living with intention. This book is about real fulfillment through small acts of compassion, purpose-driven service, and meaning that last. No pressure, no perfection, just purpose with heart. Compassionate Purpose, Discovering a Life of Fulfillment. Search for Andrea Putting on Amazon. So I have another great question for you, Warren, because you gave it to me. How do you, and it's a very important question for chocolate and coffee breaks, because it is all about speaking to someone different, somebody who's different perspective. We want to find that common ground between us, which shows that we're all the same. So how do you find common ground with somebody you've never met before?
Questions, and more questions is the answer. But I'll actually give you a bit of a formula as well, because sometimes people like to be formulaic and they might get stuck. And again, especially those introverts. The Ford principle, that is FORD, depending on the circumstances of where you're meeting these people, it might be through friends, and that's what the F stands for. So it could be through friends, and you try to find that common link, and then it starts up a conversation of, oh, how did you meet them? Or what situation did you meet them? And quite often you'll have a common interest with friends. So therefore, when they introduce new people, that's where that interest can come together, and you can work out it might be through a sporting association, a social environment, work environment, whatever it may be. And the work one comes in with the O, actually, which is your occupation. So what do you do for work? But it could be around, again, don't say, oh, what do you do? Ask, are you working on anything exciting, any projects in what you do from an occupation point of view? And they will then open up a little bit more around that occupation side of things and what they're doing and how they do it. And if people love their work, then not everybody does. I get that. I don't know why you wouldn't. I mean, get into something that you're passionate about. But the occupation side of things is intriguing, and it could be, even if they don't like it, they could be having some complications at work. They could be having a communication issue with one of their peers or with one of their upline managers, etc. So you can then open up a conversation around that about how you've experienced a situation like that and how you've handled it. So the R is recreation. Again, it could be what you do outside of work. Hopefully, you're not working 24 hours a day. So, what you do recreation-wise, it could be you just like to go for walks with, I love taking Freddie Mercury for a walk, and you get to meet so many people on walks. So having a dog is a really great way to start communication and conversations. So apart from coffee and chocolate, it could be coffee, chocolate, and dog walking. We could add to it. But having a dog and being, people love their pets. And it was interesting just seeing that advert before around pets. But the recreation side and finding that commonality, it might be they like sport. In Melbourne here, we're mad AFL people, and I find people that don't follow football, and you think, okay, some people that only follow football have trouble speaking with people who don't follow football. So you really have to be curious and ask better questions about what they do like and what they do follow. So the recreation side is really interesting. And the FORD, so it's friends, family, etc. Occupation, recreation is the R. The D is your desires, and this is where I don't recommend you start here because that's going in a little bit deep too early. But it could be what they desire in regards to destinations, what they desire in a partner, and when you go deep into desires, that's when you're really starting to get to know somebody really intimately, and they can share some things that are quite powerful and maybe things that they haven't shared with other people before. So if you just follow that formula, you will find some commonality. And one key point which I find fascinating in a business environment. So just say we're trying to attract new clients, we're speaking to somebody for the first time, is to know a little bit about a lot of things. So be interested in what's going on in the world. Be interested in what's happening in current political environments, in current sporting environments, current work trends, current tech trends. Just show a little bit of interest in lots of these things, and it's easy to access this information. And then you'll always have something to talk about, because people have often said to me, God, you've got a lot of shit stored in that mind of yours. I say, yes, I have, because I have a lot of interest in a lot of things. But boy, it makes conversations really, really easy.
Yeah, it's wonderful when you can connect and you just find that thing that sparks further conversation. And you just never know where that can take you. You may make a new friend, you may make a new business partner, you could do some amazing things in society with what you have joined together to talk about.
Yep, there is sorry to interrupt here, but I'm not sorry at all. There is one rule you have to be careful of, and you can't break this rule, and that's the rule of one-upmanship. And, oh, you did that. Oh, well, I did this. And, oh, well, I did it better than you, and that sort of thing. You must stay away from that. And we all have met that person, and you don't want to be that person.
Absolutely. And I wanted to, thank Warren for coming on and teaching us all about how we can connect better for chocolate and coffee breaks. So I want to share with you his book, I Get You. If you want to grab yourself a copy of that you can go to his website. Warren, share us your website.
It is warrentate.global. Simple as that. And it's Tate.
Anything else you'd like to share in 1 minute?
Be curious. Be curious about people. Show interest in them. Ask questions, and you just never know where that relationship can lead, whether it be on an intimate basis or a business basis. It could go anywhere. Be curious and ask better questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your advice on that. And if you've enjoyed the show today, don't forget to subscribe and like, and take someone different, someone new that you don't know to chocolate and coffee and practice some of these ideas that Warren has shared with us. And when you do, take a photo of sharing your chocolate and coffee and send it to me, because I'd love to see them. I would love to be able to share those in our Facebook group. So thank you so much for sharing with us today, and we'll see you next time on Chocolate Plain coughing break. A compassionate proposition.
More chocolate for me.
Yeah.